Hello, everybody. And I know this isn't the best lighting, but what can we do? Because I don't want to move all of these books because we are doing a huge bookish unhaul, so they're going to be moving anyway. I don't want to make that effort, you know? But I hope I'm in decent frame. We have a bunch of books that we're getting rid of. About 40. Like 42, I think. But anyway, I wanted to get started off with the books that I'm giving to a specific friend. I am giving her Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is a really good book, and I love it. It's just not something that I entirely want to keep, you know? Oh, and this is annotated. I'm giving away some of my annotated books, but it is really cute and really good. I don't think I actually wrote in it. I think based on what I'm looking at, I just like tabbed and highlighted and underlined a little bit. But this is, as mentioned, a really good book, and I love it. This is kind of like a prequel to Alice in Wonderland, and it's about the Queen of Hearts. Long before Alice fell down the rabbit hole and before the roses were painted red, the Queen of Hearts was just a girl in love for the very first time. And I also love that she wants to be a baker because I love baking, you know? Baking is a great hobby. But this is a really good book and it's a cute cover. I don't know if I prefer this cover or the US cover. I'm gonna put the US cover here somewhere, I think. And then The Shadow of the Fox by Julie Tagawa. I am cruel because I didn't tell her that this is the first book in the series and we can't get the rest of the series here, but she's going to the US and you can get the rest of the series here. A single wish will spark a new dream. Every millennium, the missing pieces of the Scroll of 1,000 Prayers are hunted, for they hold the power to call the great coming dragon and ask for any one wish. As the temple burns to the ground, Yumiko escapes with its great treasure, the first piece of the scroll, and when fate thrusts her into the path of a mysterious samurai, she knows he sees what she has. Kage is under orders to kill those who stand in his way, but will he be able to complete his mission? Will this be the dawn that sees the dragon awake? Enter a beautiful and precious land of shapeshifters and samurai, kami and legends, humans and demons, in a world in which Japanese mythology and imagination blend together. Yeah, this does have a lot to do with Japanese mythology. I never continued into the third book because there was this character that I was shipping with the main character. And he turned out to be gay. And I was very mad at him because I was shipping him with the main character for a book and a half. But I think I'm going to start to continue. Okay? I'm going to continue. But it is a really good book. I think I gave this either 3 or 4 stars, but I do sometimes still think about it, you know? Especially now that I've gotten more into anime and things like that. And also this cover is gorgeous. You see? It's beautiful. And then now we're gonna get into this stack because this is the stack that is closest to me. We have a lot of middle grade, both like upper middle grade and lower middle grade. First we have The Bark of the Bog Owl by Jonathan Rogers. I read this a while ago simply because I owned it. I own it. And it was just a great, like, in-between book, but this isn't something that is quite my taste. And this is a retelling of David. And I didn't really know that at the time, but I still found it very predictable. The son of a great landholder, Aidan Errolston lives a comfortable and settled life. That, he believes, is the one great injustice of his otherwise happy existence. But everything changes when a wandering seer announces that Aidan is destined to be the Wilder King, the long-prophesied wild man who will come from the forests and the swamps to set things right in the kingdom of Cornwall. Aidan finds himself on a journey that takes him into the world of Fichi folk, a mysterious tribe of half-civilized swamp dwellers who understand things about Aidan that he will never understood about himself. This is from the Rabbit Room Press, which is the press company that Andrew Peterson runs, and I loved the Wingfeather Saga, and so because of that, I held this book to very high standards, and it was just a letdown, you know? And then we are getting rid of the Keeper of Velocities trilogy. This is way more than a trilogy. I'm getting rid of books 5, 6, and 7. I don't know why I said trilogy. Probably because I saw 3 books. These books, even though they are really easy to read, they are massive. Most of the books in this series are over 400 pages, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger. And she could have just ended the series with 4 books, okay? That was all she needed, 4 books. I haven't even continued past book 7, and there's like 12 books now, 12, 13. I don't want to continue this just because that's a lot of reading, you know? I already know some of the stuff that happens. I already know the things that I wanted to know that was making me continue to read. So now I just don't care, you know? I just don't care. And then we have Mission to Kathy by Madeline Poland. This was an interesting read. I definitely annotated some. But this is, again, a lower middle grade book about the first missionary to China. And it did seem to have like a very westernized perspective, which I didn't love. Could have been better about that. There was still like some stuff that like didn't seem to be like come from as much of Western perspective, but this just could have been better. I could have connected to the characters more. It's just okay, you know? If like I were in middle school, I would have probably ate this up. But no, you know. And then Understood Betsy. I remember I liked this when I read it, but I don't remember anything about it. I just know that it's about this girl named Betsy, and it's kind of like Anne of Green Gables vibes. Sheltered 9-year-old Elizabeth Ann has always heard that her Aunt Frances talks about those horrid, punty Vermont cousins, and now she's terrified. Aunt Frances can no longer take care of her, and Elizabeth Ann has been sent away with her New England relatives. Rules at the comfortable New England farmhouse are relaxed. Aunt Abigail serves baked beans in the kitchen, and Elizabeth Ann, now called Betsy, must wash her own bowl and spoon. She should do that, you know? And her relatives expect her to walk to her new school all by herself? Wow! Worst of all, nobody seems to be the least bit worried about Betsy. Gradually, Betsy enjoys the queer punty ways of her country cousins, not realizing that Aunt Abigail, Cousin Anne, and Uncle Henry are quietly teaching her to think for herself. You know, that's good. Then Betsy gets a letter from Aunt Frances, and she wants Betsy to come home. It's Betsy's choice. Which life should she live? Understood Betsy has become published in many editions throughout the world, and generations of readers have delighted in its warm and charming portrayal of life in the early 1900s. I do enjoy like following little kids in the early 1900s because it just reminds me of when I was a kid and when I was really romanticizing those times, because I had a bunch of like picture books where like all of the pictures and all of that were kind of from that time, and I found myself loving those. But anyway, getting rid of that. It's just not for me, you know? And then the teeny series. These are some of the American Girl books, and I used to love American Girl when I was growing up, and I don't love it as much anymore, obviously, but I want to pass these on to some like young girl who does, and who is just encouraged to follow her passions, like I was through these books, you know? And just in general through the stories. We have book 1, Tenny, book 2, Tenny Grant in the Key of Friendship, and book 3, Tenny and Logan, Tenny Shares the Stage. No, it's a nice book, but no. Not for me anymore. and this is nothing that I can foresee myself rereading, obviously, but they were really cute books. I think those are the reasons why I love contemporary romance so much now. And then we have the Imagination Station book. I used to have another one of them, but I think I got rid of it. But I used to love Adventures in Odyssey, and again, I want to pass this on to another young little girl who can fall in love with Adventures in Odyssey and learn some things about, yes, very biased history, because this is kind of what helped me start to love a lot of history and like learn about the lives of different people, which I think fostering that kind of love when you're young is so important, and that was how I fostered that type of love, is through books. You see? Join Patrick and Beth in the Imagination Station as they travel to Fiji in the 1850s. Patrick hopes for a tropical vacation, and instead he finds out that cannibals are alive and well on the islands. In truth, the cannibals are burning down every Christian village that they can find. When Patrick and a sailor named Nettleton get knocked overboard, the cousins are separated, and Patrick must fend off escaped convicts in a terrible storm. Even worse, he finds out the cannibal king without even trying. Meanwhile, Beth follows missionary James Calvert as he searches for Patrick, but Calvert's greater mission is to find the king of the cannibals and tell him about the Bible. Is Calvert leading Beth away from danger or straight towards it? The key to adventure lies within your imagination. No, I loved these as a kid, but now, not as much, no? And then we have these books by this famous Christian singer, Natalie Grant, and they're clearly based off of her own children and her own life. We have, I think we might be getting rid of another series that's based off of a very famous family's life. Or maybe not, because I don't see them. No, we're not. But I used to love these when I was like 10. But we are following twin girls, Maddie and Mia. Yes, I am reading off of these books. And I'm just reading the top of each book because it's the exact same. Join twins Mia and Maddie and their little sister Lulu as they travel the country finding adventure, mystery, and mischief along the way. Together with their father and their famous mother singer Gloria Glimmer and their slightly wacky nanny Miss Julia, the smart and sassy sisters learn lessons about being good friends, telling the truth, and a whole lot more. So this one is Light Up New York, which is like New York City. This one is London Art Chase, London, obviously. And this one is Miracle in Music City, which is in Nashville. And I think this is the first one, maybe. And then we have Princess Academy Book 2, Palace of Stone. I never read Book 1, and I never knew that there was a Book 1, but the only reason that I kept this was because I was just waiting for a chance for me to buy Book 1, but I could never find it here, which is kind of sad because I know that this was a very popular read for like my generation, kind of. But from what I understand of Book 1, we follow this girl, main character, Miri, and she enters like these trials to become the princess, and that's all I know. And there's a tiny bit of a love triangle, but you know, it's still good. And this is like early 2000s, I think. I'm gonna look at the copyright page to see what year it was published. 2012, so yeah, early 2010s, very much that vibe, but also I loved it, you know? I ate it up as much as any girl. I think I read this initially in like 6th grade, maybe 7th grade, but it's a really good read for young girls, and I hope to hopefully pass this on to someone who has read the first book and who hasn't read the second. And then we have The Light and the Glory by Peter Marshall and David Manuel. This is like kind of an anthology story, kind of about the beginnings of America from 1492 and 1787, and like how a lot of it does point to God. this is a bit biased, but when you're a 12-year-old kid, I don't mind that, but I never entirely finished it because first off, I do think I started to notice those biases, and secondly, there was a huge time where I was really interested in learning about the American Revolution and the history of America, and unfortunately, I started to read this at the very end of that when I was just like getting really tired about learning about all of this and all of that and like the same thing over and over and over again. So I just started to get tired of it, as anyone would. Then we have this book about Eric Liddell. He was one of my favorite missionaries growing up, but I did read this very recently. It's like less than 200 pages, like 176 pages. I did annotate this a little bit, but this is about Eric Liddell and how he stood up for what he believed in and said no to racing in the Olympics on a Sunday, and even if you are okay with doing stuff on a Sunday, this is still a very important work because it just, his life is very much an inspiration because it just shows the importance of standing up for what you believe, even if everyone around you is saying, no, do this, it makes more sense to do this, your way is wrong, blah, 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 which is definitely still true today. And this is a very important story, And there's also a movie about his life called Chariots of Fire. Highly suggest watching it. It's so good. It's an older movie, but it's really good. And this also talks about his time as a missionary in China, whereas Chariots of Fire just highlights his Olympics journey, which is still obviously very important. And then we have all of these books about Christian missionaries. First off, I barely remember reading these, and I read these around a time where I was obsessed about learning about Christian missionaries, which this is definitely a topic that I want to get into more, but I'm not going to go into what these are about because it's definitely an interesting topic, and you guys could definitely look into them if you are interested. What I like is on the covers they have the different countries that the people served in, but we have Gladys Aylward, William Carey, Mary Slessor, and George Mueller. And then we have this book about Martin Luther King Jr., who again is a very important person in American and kind of world history. And then we have An Even Better Christmas by Matt Chandler. This is by the guy who is the leader of Elevation Worship, I think, and just talks about the importance of Christmas. And Christmas is indeed a very important holiday. Now we're going to get into these stacks. We're going to start with this one and then go into this one. But first we have Wuthering Heights, a book I hated. As in, anytime I need any type of motivation, I tell myself, if you can finish Wuthering Heights, you can do this. Okay? That is the level to which I hated Wuthering Heights. And I might have a reading vlog on it. I think I was filming one at the time, but I don't think that I continued with it. But I just want this to go to someone who will enjoy it better. And I'm also really mad at the movie. I haven't seen the movie, obviously, because there's on-page stuff, But I just don't want to experience that storyline again. But I'm really mad about the casting of Heathcliff, because he is supposed to be a person of color. That is important to his character and explains a lot of the things that he does. Okay? Make him a person of color. Anyway, now we have Arthur Miller's The Crucible. I bought this because we were reading it for class, and I just don't really want to keep it. Like, it's an okay book. Like, it's actually a play about the Salem witch trials, but I never really connected with the characters in this. And many times that's important for me to enjoy a book. But next we have the Katie series. But this is actually a compendium of 3 books. It's by Susan M. Coolidge. We have What Katie Did, What Katie Did Next, and What Katie Did at School. This is just like a really cute compendium of tales. Follows 12-year-old Katie. Something happens with her that like makes her really down and stuff. And she finds hope in the midst of all that, and it's really cute. And it's a good story to read in later middle school, even in like early high school, because Katie's going through a lot of the same things that people at that age are going through, and I found this in general to be really cute. And that's why I want to give this away, because I want somebody else to enjoy it, somebody else who was younger than me than when I read it. I read it at like 17, I think. And yeah, these are really cute, but also they were not for me when I read it. And I just hope that whoever gets them can enjoy them more, you know? And then we have Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. This was really the only C.S. Lewis book that I read that I didn't enjoy. It's just like the plot was way out there. The writing was good. Obviously it's C.S. Lewis, but not to the standard to which I held him compared to Narnia. And I don't even know if I'm going to continue the rest of the series, because I've heard that especially book 2 is worse. Not sure about book 3. But book 2 is worse. This is a sci-fi book. C.S. Lewis's the first book in C.S. Lewis's acclaimed space trilogy, which continues with Perelandra and That Hideous Strength. Out of the Silent Planet begins the adventures of the remarkable Dr. Ransom. Here, that estimable man is abducted by a megalomaniacal psychiatrist and his accomplice and taken via spaceship to the red planet of Malacandra. 2 men are in need of a human sacrifice, and Dr. Ransom seems to fit the bill. Clearly. Once on the red planet, however, he eludes his captors, risking his life and his chances of returning to Earth, becoming a stranger in a land that is enchanting in its difference from Earth, and its instructive in its similarity. You know, it's a good book, but not good enough for me, honestly. Not good enough for me to keep it. I tried to be as strict as I could with getting rid of my books. I did get rid of less than half of them, but the rest of them I'm gonna keep for now, and then get rid of maybe some of them. But anyway, we have Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I love a good classic, but unfortunately this was not it for me. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars or whatever. I annotated it a lot, but again, it's not what I would have wanted. I did have to read this for class, so maybe as part of it was I was forcing myself to read it. But until like you could see at the very, very beginning, tiny notes that my teacher made. And so I have a lot of nice annotations, and I do love annotating in this way, and I think I might want to continue doing like this type of like stricter annotations. But this book in general wasn't for me. I think I might want to, if I were to annotate more, I would want to do it with like a Jane Austen novel, because I love Jane Austen. But Charles Dickens is just And I remember especially at the beginning, me having to watch video summaries of the different chapters and like things that went on. I gradually got used to his writing style and was able to understand more and more more I got in. But I think after I read A Tale of Two Cities, I'm just going to be done with him, you know. And then moving on to this stack, which we might even combine to make this stack bigger. Oh, I forgot to talk about this series that I'm getting rid of, the adventure series that I'm not gonna take out. But I'm getting rid of the series because as much as I loved them, they're not quite for me anymore. They're not anything that I'm going to reread, but they kind of reminded me of the Boxcar Children. We follow these 4 kids and they just go on different adventures, and all of them are like the island of adventure, the castle of adventure, the valley of adventure, the sea of adventure, the mountain of adventure, the ship of adventure, and the circus of adventure. If what I remember correctly, the Boxcar Children had like more of a mystery element to them. This is like very same vibes, but just without as much mystery. But I quite liked them as a kid. I wanted to keep them to reread them, but I never got the chance to reread them. But we are getting into some young adult and classics. First, I'm getting rid of Thorn by Intisar Kahani. And then this is a good book, and I quite liked it, but it didn't quite live up to my expectations. I had to switch over to audiobook from reading it physically. Also partially probably because I wanted to get to Empire of Storms, because I read this last summer and it was good. I continued the series and it follows a completely different character. Same plot and everything, just completely different new character, and so that very much threw me off of my game. I think it would have been more interesting following this character other than her, or like maybe getting some sort of dual POV situation. That would have been better. I don't own the rest of the series though. But this is a Goose Girl retelling, and it is quite good. A princess with 2 futures, a destiny all her own. Princess Alira has always longed to escape the confines of her royal life, her cruel family, and her unwitting betrothal to the foreign Prince Kestrin. When a mysterious sorceress robs Alira of both her identity and her role as a princess, Alira seizes the opportunity to start a new life for herself as a Goose Girl. But Alira soon finds that Kestrin is not what she expected. The more Alira learns of the new kingdom, the pain and suffering its people endure, as well as the danger facing Kestrin, the more she knows that she cannot remain a Goose Girl forever. Caught between 2 worlds, Alira ultimately must decide who she is and what she stands for. This kind of reminds me, like, the premise is starting to remind me of Kiss of Deception. Except no love triangle and, like, different plots going on afterwards. But this is a good book. I enjoyed it, but I hope to give it to someone who enjoys it even more, you know? And then we have the Inheritance Games. I picked this up hoping that I would read it physically and like be able to annotate it, but that never happened. So I'm just getting rid of it. I like Jennifer Lynn Barnes and her writing, and I'm reading the new sequels that are coming out with the Inheritance Games. They're not as good as the original series, and like this is pretty good. It's what kind of started to get me into young adult mystery thriller, which I do prefer a bit more than adult, not gonna lie. But I quite enjoyed this. I enjoyed like the Cinderella-esque part of it. I enjoyed the plot, definitely got me, and she did inspire me to start studying some psychology and like learn more about criminal psychology and all that jazz. This one I'm not gonna show you what it is because it's gonna give away where I live and I don't want to give that away. And then, oh, here's the next book in that series, The River of Adventure, and I'm gonna put you right there. But I'm also getting rid of the Red Queen series. I liked the Red Queen series more than Powerless, definitely. Even though I'm not getting rid of Powerless just yet. I don't know why. But I think because I've had these for just so long, I don't even have the second book, but because I've just had these for so long, I think it's just time for me to move on from these. They are just so good, and I loved all of them when I first read them, and these did help me get a lot into like fantasy and like young adult fantasy, dystopian, some, but I was already into dystopian with the Hunger Games. But when I read this, especially the first book, it felt kind of like a Hunger Games knockoff, which is crazy considering all the stuff that's going on now with Red Queen and Powerless. This was before Powerless came out. It came out 3 years ago, and I read this 5 years ago, I think. 5 or 6 years ago, which is crazy to think about. Yeah, about 6 years ago now. But I'm getting rid of Red Queen, King's Cage, and Warstorm. I do not own the second book, which is Glass Sword, and neither do I own the collection of short stories. So we're just getting rid of these. Okay. And then the next book that we're getting rid of, The Blacklisted by Edogawa Rampo. I'm starting to love Japanese classics, but this is some of the stuff that was going on in here I just do not approve of, you know? Like, yeah, obviously it's meant to be a mystery thriller, but first off, I loved Edogawa's use of perspective, but I think it just like went too overboard with all of that, and there was just a couple of points where I was almost gonna DNF the series. I have a reading vlog reading the series. Not series, reading this book. It's not a series. But I don't think so I am trying to read as many Bungo Stray Dogs books as I can, like meaning books by authors that are featured in Bungo Stray Dogs. And in fact, I have my entire readathon based off of it, which I will have an announcement coming soon regarding that, and it is really sad, but this is just, you know? I didn't like this one as much, and of all the BSD authors, I don't think I'm going to continue this one. I don't think I'm going to continue with Rampo, but that is really disappointing because Rampo is my favorite character, and I'm really sad. And then Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. I understand why this is classic, and I liked all of the historical tensions that was involved in this book, but I couldn't understand some of the stuff that was going on. Probably because I was listening to the audiobook and not reading it physically. I think if I were reading it physically, it would have been a bit better. But this, in one ear, out the other, you know? But I think that's where I'm going to end the video because I'm getting tired of talking. I've been talking for like 30 minutes, an hour, and I'm starting to lose some steam. But I hope you guys didn't lose some steam watching this video. And I hope you guys remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Comment if you want me to keep any of these books. I think this video will be going out before I get rid of some of them. And I forgot to mention that I'm not getting rid of any books that I physically own. I'm going to probably do that towards the end of the summer. But, I'm sorry, not that I physically own. My brain is weird. Books that I physically own that I haven't read. A lot better. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and have a very nice, wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, night, wherever you are. Love you.